Oh, thank you so much, Matt. All right, so we can go to the next slide, please. All right, so today we are honored to have John with us. I have known John personally, I don't know, what, almost 17, 18 years now, at
I
least.
try not to count those anymore.
They just fly by.
Yeah.
But welcome. Thank you so much, John, for being our, participating and for kind of actually taking, and we want the others as well. Please, in any way, shape, or form, please do participate, ask questions, present if you can. This is at the end of the day, this is a very it's a learning, educational, collaborative body forum. So between Matt and I, what we try to do is simply kind of find the time for everyone to get together, and we want the community to do the rest. All right. Thank you. So our mission, Agile Austin is a nonprofit, as you all know. We do the main goal is to help everyone with the professional growth while we all learn from each other through collaborative events. And we want to share obviously everything about Agile values, principles, and practices that. Next slide. All right, we have two maxes. You have to kind of, so this is the original one from, and then we have another one on the call as well. But Ben, Chase, Sid, Jenny, they've done a fabulous job of continuing to kind of grow our community. So thank you all. That's our board. Sponsorship wise, we always are looking for additional sponsors. We do have multiple levels of sponsorship. So if your corporation can kind of help pitch in, it's always preferred and recommended and kind of appreciated. So we'll look forward to, if you have any way that you can kind of contribute in that way as well to Agile Austin, that'd be great. You can also obviously, most of you, I'm assuming, are already members. It's $35 a year. All righty, next slide, please. There we go. Yeah, next slide, please. Oh, there we go. It took a. Okay, sorry. All right, so we do have multiple meetups, 6 different SIGs. You are in the product and AI SIG. This is relatively it's been around, but then it kind of got resurrected recently this year. But we do have the ones around Agile coaching, Agile at scale, book club, leaders, SIG, and the Lean Kanban SIG. Again, if you have an interest, please join as many, or the ones that you absolutely enjoy. And from a sponsorship perspective, Agile Velocity has been our esteemed sponsor, platinum sponsor for a long time now. So we appreciate that. We also wanted to announce that ResumeX, they are our brand new gold sponsors. We were hoping that someone from that company might join today to speak a minute or two about what they do. But they essentially empower remote teams, champion ethics. And so we will hopefully have them soon in one of the other events. Silver sponsor, Ed Meliora, right? We've had them for a while as well. So thank you all if you are on the call. I guess a couple interesting things that people may or may not be aware of. If you're looking for any professional development, we do have a scholarship that allows you to take a new course or a certificate. You do have to apply. So this link will be shared. And you kind of can obviously, if you're looking for work and all. There's also, I think I don't know how active it is. I don't think so, but there's also like a job channel in the Slack channel. And we are always looking for volunteers. As we said before, it's a community event, it's a community organization. Always appreciate any sort of funding, any sort of participation. It's all, at the end of the day, it's a nonprofit, and we're just trying to grow Agile and continue to mature Agile and beyond. All right, so real quick, Matt and I kind of, have been kind of working through this SIG last few months. Obviously, we couldn't do anything without the participation of everyone on the call and others that may not be on the call, especially given the summer. But hopefully everyone's enjoying their summer, and thanks for joining me again. I think we may have just Okay, a couple quick call outs. So for August, we're gonna do something kind of different, and we'll kind of give you a preview of it. But we're trying to do something like it's kind of like a 5 minute speed dating kind of thing, where people can talk about their experiences, or people can, yeah. Next slide is great. So
That's
in, yeah. So basically, actually, can you move on to slide 13, please? Yeah. Oh, that's a different one. Sorry, never mind. We don't have it here. My bad. All right. So the idea was for the next meeting, we're gonna do a quick lightning round kind of thing. If you have any questions, if you have comments, practices, ideas, please do let us know. That's the only way to make that successful, because honestly, there's not a whole lot of facilitation or presentations. All right.
Hey Vishal, it's just a call out. It's the 23rd as opposed to the last
Yes.
Friday of the month, because the last Friday is sort of connected to the holiday. So
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the call. All right, so then I'm gonna hand it over to John, who's gonna talk about humans and the usability factors in AI. So this is very different. Excited and looking forward to listen to you. Thanks, John. Over to you. If anyone has questions, please do submit via chat if possible. We are trying to avoid Zoom bombing and all that, so we're gonna try to keep people on mute as much as possible. And then towards the end, we might open it up. All right. Thanks, John.
absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for having me. I'm going to figure out where's my share screen. Continue. Here we go. All right. Slideshow mode for readability. Okay. So this is a recap of the lessons learned and what we accomplished at a previous startup that I worked at. The lessons learned are about the psychology in usability when presenting data in systems. Let me just give a quick background introduction, and I've got Zoom windows all in my way, everywhere in the way. Okay. All right. So I have been a developer for a long time. I've been an Agilist for a really long time. Right about the time that I did found Just Labs, my consulting company, is about when I got involved with Agile Austin. So it's actually a pleasure to be back and back here and back with everybody. I see some faces and old friends that I recognize, but I don't like to count how many years it's been, because that just makes me feel old. And so this is a story about Aptage. I co-founded Aptage with Murray in 2016, and we did have an exit in 2020. We were acquired. So that's really awesome. This is really the story of some of the early time, like the 2016, 2017 timeframe. And in that timeframe is when we had built some really cool stuff, and we were trying to have users use it, and our users couldn't use it. And this is the problem that we were struggling with. Recently, I've turned back into the Just Labs with a focus on Just Labs AI, solving custom AI solutions and problems. And so this is still all near and dear to my heart. But this presentation is about the story of how we figured out how to apply some psychology principles to solve our usability problems that really were pretty serious for our little startup. And why is this not working? There we go. Okay, I'm serious. I actually want people to pull out your phones and do a little bit of screen time. I want you to do a Google or whatever your favorite search engine search is for images, and look for dashboard. Go ahead, everybody, let's take a minute. Just do a quick search on your phone, look for dashboard, and I will tell you all why in a moment as I move Zoom windows around again. Okay. All right. Now, pretty soon you should see a whole bunch of dashboard widgets come up. I want you to count, just do a quick count of how many widgets do you see on your screen, just total. And then, hang on, I do have to. Okay, just do a quick count. How many widgets do you see on your screen? If I look in here, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10. You know, just a bunch of them, right? And now look for widgets, they're tiny, I get that, but look for widgets that have a positive or a good indicator or a negative or a bad indicator, and count how many widgets have positive or negative indicators. And if I jump forward, on my example, when I did this to prepare these slides, I counted 88 widgets total, and 6 of those widgets had a good or bad indication. And I've put them on the slide here. We can see these exclamation marks. We can see green or not green. Those are the kinds of things that are indications of good or bad. If anybody's not muted or able to type quickly, roughly what percentage did you find? I found 7% had indications of good or bad. Only 7% of the widgets had a positive or negative indication.
Does it count if it's not just binary? Like
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, tri-state is fine.
I'd say about 10%. So
10%?
roughly in line with what you saw.
Okay. All right. And part of the point that I want to make is that's not high enough. The widgets should give us an interpretation. This is part of where we're going to be going with this. And if you think of your own dashboards in your own company or for your own stakeholders, you can apply the same counting, just quick counting, to see kind of how much are we telling people. All right. So this story that I'm telling in this, and Zoom windows are all over the place. Okay. All right. So this story is about a 2017 timeframe. We in this startup had built a project schedule forecasting engine. When are we really going to finish? We all know that project schedules and delivery deadlines, there's always risk around those things. And we built some really cool math that could predict when are you really going to do that by learning from how things are going and applying that realism to how things are going to the plan, and it would come up with an updated forecast. We were using Bayesian parameter learning and Monte Carlo Markov chain and custom models to do things. And so it was all really cool stuff that we really were excited about. But we couldn't figure out how to visualize the insights that we had. And of critical importance was that our users that we were trying to sell this system to, our users couldn't use the system. And that, of course, for a startup is an existential crisis. And it was a big problem for us. And this is where the story begins, is us looking at our system and going, oh my God, we can't train or teach people how to use this. We have to do it for them. And that's not a product. That doesn't work. So that's where we started. Here is the takeaway. This is the end result of our learnings, is we learned to ask these 2 questions and apply the answers to help improve the usability of the system. How does this data make me feel? Is this good data or bad data? Is it a good outcome? Are things on track? Is it a bad outcome? Are things problematic? And if there's a problem, if something needs to be done, what is the default action that the system is nudging us to do, telling us we ought to do first? Those are the 2 key questions. This is the takeaway for the whole presentation. And I'm going to get to the story of how we uncovered these in the books that we used and the results that we ended up putting into our system to accomplish this. But this is the takeaway. This is what we figured out. So here is the first visualization that we created in our startup. And this is, if anybody's interested, this is a empirical distribution that's the result of the Monte Carlo Markov chain simulation based on some parameter learning and the models that we ran. What this is saying is that there's some odds that we're going to finish in 8 or 9 more weeks. And if the deadline is 14 weeks, well, we're probably going to finish before the deadline. And in fact, we are 68% likely to finish before the deadline. And that's green. And that means that there's 32% risk that we're going to miss the deadline. Which, okay, this is good. There's good stuff in here. We know when we're going to most likely finish, 8 to 9 weeks. We know that we've got 68% of on time or early, which is good in green. And we know that there's 32% risk of being late. This all sounds great, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. So is this green, is it really good or is it really bad? And this is where the context becomes a little bit of a problem. And this is the context we were operating in for what we were delivering to the customers we were working with. Is 68% green good or bad is really the question. Now, if it's 68% confidence for a SaaS feature release for, a continuous delivery company, 68% confidence that we're going to hit when we want to is pretty good. We'd be very happy with that. If the context that we're operating in, though, is a FDA regulatory submission for a new drug application, 32% risk of missing an FDA submission is a big problem. That's a lot of risk for that environment in that context. And so the green or the red here is not really the whole story. It doesn't tell whether this is good green, enough green, or too much red. And so our users had to figure this out, and we created the system. We could kind of understand this stuff, but obviously this was not really meeting the needs that our users had. And the context wasn't showing up in here. It wasn't the whole picture. And so this wasn't a sufficient picture. The other part that made this even more complicated is we had similar diagrams and outputs for every item in the backlog and for every task in the project plan. In fact, we had two of them, the start and the finish ones. And so a 100-line backlog would have 200 of these, and we would regenerate and update them every week. And so we would have hundreds of these floating around, and we could kind of tie them to things and try and overlay them in the backlog where they would be. But this was just information overload, and it wasn't helpful to our users. Not only did the green and red not tell the whole story, but we had a bunch of these. And so this was just not working for our end users and not helpful. We had thousands and hundreds of thousands of data points that we could plot, but it didn't tell any story to our users. So we recognized that we were making our users do really slow, painful thinking, and they were not interested in doing that. And we could do it because we built the system and we loved our math, and we were enamored with it, of course. But we were asking our users to do this really slow thinking and trying to do all the work in their own head. And we went back, we were fans of Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. The psychology in here talks about how our brains operate with two different modes. We have fast thinking modes and slow thinking modes. Fast thinkings are automatic, intuitive, super easy. Our brain just does them. Slow thinking, it requires allocating our mental attention and our energy to doing things. And here's an example. The stop sign, anybody who's driven a car for more than a year, very, very able to understand road signs, including stop signs, with very fast thinking, intuitive. They know what it means. They don't have to think about it. They just know what to do. On the other hand, the slow thinking is algebra and matrix math and probability thinking. These things, while there's some aspects of them that our brain is good at, anything that gets more than just a few variables or complicated is definitely a slow thinking problem. And we were asking our users to do algebra in their head with every image, that every widget that they were looking at. And this is clearly not where we wanted to be. So we knew we had to apply fast thinking so that our users' intuitive reaction was the right one. And that's what we've struggled with. And this is what we were doing, was giving our users a whole bunch of widgets and asking them to apply their own slow thinking every time they looked at our system. And at the beginning of this presentation, the reason I asked people to look at the search for dashboard widgets is most 90% of those dashboard widgets don't give any interpretation to the users. The 90% of these widgets are also asking their users and stakeholders to apply the slow thinking and do all the interpretation for them. And that's not the most effective place to be operating from. So what did we do? We went back to the drawing board. We created the first risk burn down chart. Now this chart is better. It definitely reduces a lot of the information overload. It's a view of the entire timeline. So instead of having hundreds of images every week updated, it shows the iterations. It shows time moving to the right and provides the big picture. And it provides a context for, are we operating in a high risk environment or a low risk environment? And is 32% risk good or bad? In this case, we've plotted 32% risk, and it shows us that we're a little bit bad. We're in the red because we're higher than the burn down line indicates we ought to be right now. So the 32% risk, some of that risk is more risk than we should have today at iteration 3. So we've done a pretty good job of being able to now show, well, given this context, given the slope of this burn down curve, given where we should be, we're actually in the red. And this indicates that something is at risk and something needs to be handled. So that's positive. This was a step in the right direction. But it got complicated. If we were in the green, if we removed risk, step in iteration 4, we made a bunch of progress and things now look better. We now have this weird green in green thing going on. And this, of course, confused our end users, and we were really not super happy with it ourselves. It doesn't even look good. This is the point in the presentation where I want to pause, and I know it's going to be a shock to everybody, but the three of us that were working on this, Murray and Walter and myself, well, we were all three engineers, and we were trying to build user interfaces, and this is the stuff that we were creating. Now, I know it's a surprise that we were engineers, given what you see on the screen right now, but I'm just here to admit the truth. This is what we were. This is as far as we could get. But we knew that this wasn't good enough. This was not helping our end users understand when are they in the good section, because the green and green just doesn't make any sense. All right, so we got help. We actually went with an Austin UX firm. I just blanked out on the name. I tend to have a lot of adrenaline when I'm presenting, and I forget things like that. I can't do arithmetic or remember names. The graphic standard. We went with an Austin firm that helped us build this. We gave them our story. We told them what we were trying to do, and this is what they gave us back. This was their usability. Now, in hindsight, yeah, this makes a whole lot of sense. And many innovations in hindsight seem much more obvious than right before you figured it out. So we were happy to have this help. They definitely did a great job. They gave us something that would tell our end users, if you're below this line, you're in the green. If you're above the line, you're in the red, and something's a problem. And so this worked. This was way better. This is what it ended up looking more like in our final product. This diagram, being able to show this to our end users, really improved and created happy users, which was just a monumentally important step for us as a startup. Our users, before we got to this, we were trying to write training materials, and we were trying to give people advice and write down lessons and learned and how to interpret these previous images that I had shown everyone. And our training time was infinite. No amount of writing or explaining would teach anybody how to use the previous diagrams. And when we got to this and we built this into the system, the amount of training time that it took, we would put this together into an hour of training course or a white paper, and people would get this in 20, 25 minutes. If you're above the line, it's red. If you're below the line, it's green. We were able to trigger into our users' intuitive and fast thinking. Look at the picture. Yep, there's too much red. We have a problem. We should do something about it. And so this was like a great spot for us to be. We were finally able to provide this to our users, and they could use this system themselves. And the training became totally easy, and we made a ton of progress. So this was a big step forward, where we had spent a lot of effort applying the psychology and thinking fast and slow and figuring out and getting some help how to apply fast thinking so that our system communicated to our users well. The users, think Scrum Masters and project managers, those were the people that were using this system, and they wanted to look at it and know if they had a problem they had to deal with. And so this was what we got to with the fast thinking psychology we were leveraging. If anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to take questions. The next step is the second psychology that we learned and applied, and I can jump into that one as well.
Hey, John, I got a just quick question for you.
Yeah.
What's an example of a conversation that happened with a stakeholder when you were in the red and in the green, like just from just high level, like how did those go?
Yeah, they would actually do have an example. I can jump to the example for that conversation. But the conversations in general would go that if your project is in the green that means, yes, there is some risk in the system. Like all this space reflects some risk, but you've got well-managed risk in the system. And the users, the project managers, the scrum masters would look and say, yeah, we understand we've got some unknowns, we've got some uncertainties and some risk, but yeah, we also feel like we're on the right track and we're making good progress. And so the intuitive, this green matches what we think, what we feel in our gut about how things are going, was part of the conversation. And then if things would jump up into the red, often the project managers and scrum masters would often have a gut feel that there was too much risk, but they didn't necessarily have the data to be able to do anything about it. Yeah, we might make it, but it feels like it's more risky now. And what are you going to do with that? Like, how can you tell people that it doesn't feel as good anymore? And now what? When we were able to show them this red, and if this red went way up high, then you could see a lot of red risk, and then that would become part of and it would have a number behind it, like 68% risk. That would then provide the opportunity for the conversation to be, we've measured this to the best of our knowledge, this is way too high, and are you comfortable with 68% risk of missing this deadline? And that becomes a much more fruitful conversation to have. Joel, I see a hand raised.
Yeah, just this reminds me of some work I did with a large bank where we had these portfolio reviews every week with, I don't know, 50, 60 people on the call because there were hundreds of developers involved.
Mm-hmm.
And at a certain point, one of the senior executives said, look, it's all fine that everybody knows how to write a book report. I don't care about anything that's not read. What I need to know is which things you have to take action on.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of it plays to this kind of a chart of it lets you discard the things that you don't really have to spend attention on and know where to focus. I think it's great.
Yeah, exactly right. When it does take a little bit of a leading, people need to trust that this chart is showing them green when it is green and red when it's red. And so once you get through that trust time frame of trying this out, these kinds of techniques, then when you trust it, then only show me the red ones, and then that's what we can deal with and take action on. That's exactly right. Okay. Speaking of action, let me jump to the next psychology. So there's another book called Nudge, and also recommend this book. Very, very good book. So in this book, here's the definition and the reason, the psychology behind a nudge is that people have a strong tendency to go along with the status quo or the default option. Now, there's a lot of psychology, a bunch of research that kind of backs this up, but people will often choose the default option unless they really, really feel strongly that they have to do something else. And so the nudge is giving people an opportunity to push them towards the right default option, which they're most likely to take. And then the advice, what do we do with this, is summarized, I think, best in this quote: a choice architect has the responsibility for organizing the context in which people make decisions. And so the example of a portfolio review, the decisions we're making are which projects should we start, which projects should we kill, and which projects need to be addressed because they're moving into risk that we can fix. That's the context that those are operating in. And the people designing that system have the responsibility of being good choice architects to set that up so that the right information is presented so people can make the best decisions with the highest odds of positively influencing the system. So this is the psychology, and we were all aware of this, we knew this. What we wanted to do in our system was not just build these, actually, sorry, I almost missed this one. Nudging is something that advertisers use all the time. Here's a big advertiser, Amazon. We can see the Pike Place roast coffee. It's got a bunch of stars, which is, all your friends like this kind of psychology. And then in particular, the 2 points that especially trigger into the nudge psychology is it's in the first position. It's the first thing that we see in the list of things, and it's got the tag, the best seller. Well, this has to be the best choice. It's the most popular. It's one of the most popular. Look at how many reviews. It's in the first place. We're being nudged by advertisers all the time. And the psychology says that we all fall prey and have a whole lot of likelihood that we're going to choose this first one because it's got the label, it's got the first position, the pole position, and all these things. So this is being used on us all the time anyway. But so the psychology behind this is very prevalent, but we can use it ourselves for good in our own systems for our own stakeholders. So here's back to our startup and our product. One of the ways this descriptive, predictive, prescriptive, these three stages are one of the ways that you can look at data or analytic or AI ML systems. The first thing that you can do with data is you can describe the data. You can help understand it. Think of Excel and Power BI and other tools that can look at data and present it so you can better understand it. Those are very much descriptive systems, and they can be very effective and powerful. From there, though, you can move to another level of prediction. Predictive systems they often rely on already having done some of the descriptive work, but predictive systems build a model, an algorithm of AI ML solution that predicts what's going to happen given some data. Predictive systems are really good, and that's what we were building in the previous images that I had shown you, is we were predicting when will this project really finish, what's going to happen with the schedules. That's what we were doing. The third level of elevation that you can get to is not just predicting what's going to happen, but also being prescriptive, telling users, humans, or other automation systems, what should you do next, and giving them advice. That's where we wanted to go. And this is why using the psychology of nudge was so important for us, is because we wanted to create recommended actions that had the highest odds of creating good outcomes. That's exactly a perfect fit for having a really good nudge as the default solution. The image on the screen right now was the kind of the placeholder we put in the early days of our startup. We knew we wanted to have these recommendations for what to do next. We didn't know what they were going to look like, and this is where we started. This was like the boilerplate text for what we started with. But we knew we wanted to get to good prescriptive systems that had the right nudge so that our users, what action should they take, was the best that we could come up with, the best that we knew possible. The way that we solved this problem is our nudge in our system was what we called risk sourcing. And it was both quantified and sorted. And so here's how this played out. A project manager, scrum master, when something goes up into the red, the first thing they need to know is that there is a problem. And that's what this system, the predictive system, would do. It would flag this red and it would show we have a problem here. The next thing that these users would need to know is the most likely cause of that problem. What's causing this risk? And then they can figure out what to do about it. But pointing them at the highest cause was the thing that we could do in our system. We could nudge them. What that looked like, what that turned into, was risk sourcing, where given this problem, we would identify the top 2, 3, or 4 most impactful contributors to that risk, to that red. And the way that we would do that is we would quantify that risk in time. All schedule questions are time questions. So we quantified that into time. And we can see the first one, the default first top one, is 9 days of risk, 9 days of delay risk, that task 3 handoff from team Y is going to be late. That was the biggest risk that we could measure in the system. The next risk, sorted down, would be 4 days of risk that one team's velocity was slower than expected. And that also could cause a delay in the future. And then the smallest risk that we had that affected this was a 2-day risk that task 5 estimates had more uncertainty than we otherwise would have assumed. And so the estimates then had some uncertainty and risk. In this system, what we did is we created a nudge that when you see a problem, the number one, the top of this, is the most likely choice to give you the best place to leverage your efforts and spend your action. What's important about the nudge, though, and the psychology behind it, is we're not telling the users this is, sorry. So we're not telling users that you must go talk to Team Y about this handoff. It's just that that's the highest recommendation that we can give you. The users, the stakeholders, are still welcome to use their own judgment, and they very well might know more about what's going on. And perhaps that handoff is a completely external dependency that nobody can do anything about. And so working on the other risks might actually be the right choice. And the humans in the system might simply know more about what's going on. And so the nudge is to give people a really good default, and the systems, the math, the algorithms can predict what the highest likelihood default answer is and present that to the users. And so this is the way that we did this in our own system. And this is how we got to the nudge for our system. Does anybody have any questions about the nudge?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Aha. So I hear you, John, in regards to how you come about it and everything. The one thing that lingers in my mind is the work has to be done initially to understand what an actual risk is to a team. And all of that can vary humongously from team to team, because some teams might be, oh, any kind of a bug is a risk. And some of the teams are like, look, if the software delivers value, we don't care how buggy it is, okay? And stuff like that. It just varies. So I think that that is a lot of work that has to be done, preliminary work, to make sure that then when you plug in all this data, it will work as a system that you want it to.
Yes, you're absolutely right. What is a risk? In this case, the context of what we were building was schedule risk. We were building a schedule forecasting engine, and schedule, and now there are some teams like the SaaS feature delivery example, where if you're a few weeks later than you hoped to be, it might not matter that much. That might not be the biggest risk to that user group. In this case, I can explain that, getting clear and understanding what risk were we measuring, what impact did it have to our end users. We spent definitely many months working on the math, the algorithms, the what are we solving and what does it mean and how do we make this right. We spent months on that. And then, to be honest, we spent even more months, probably 50% or 100%, like almost twice as many months of time trying to figure out how to show our users what the model was telling us.
Yeah.
And so you're right that there's absolutely hard work in understanding, how do I know that this 9 days is realistic, that it's a valid interpretation of the math and the data? How do I know that this 9 days matters and is the right thing? Absolutely correct. We spent a lot of time and a lot of like real good deep thinking and collaboration, making the model work right and provably right, demonstrably right. But this was our lessons learned in, once we've done that hard work and we figured out what is a risk, how do we make it presentable and usable by our users? And that was the piece that we honestly struggled with longer than the math.
Yeah. No, I can totally imagine that, the amount of time spent to sort out the details and stuff. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Wait, here we go. Matt, you had asked about real conversations with end users. This was a real conversation we had with a manufacturing company. They were standing up a new product line, a new manufacturing assembly line, and their project was about a year long, and it was 42 weeks remaining. So it was early days. It was spring, and we measured that one of their vendors was putting their timeline at 97% risk. And we've sourced it to this one vendor, and the vendor was likely to make them almost 2 months late in their deadlines. And it was 97% likely that it was this one vendor. This conversation, we gave the COO this data. We showed it to them. The COO clearly saw this red. This is the big jump in red towards to 97% that they were able to see. They clearly saw there was a big risk, and we were able to give them, this is your default way to address this, is the nudge. And the COO of this company had no problem calling the vendor and eventually firing them and replacing them with a different vendor. So this conversation, I mean, 97% risk is pretty high. It's a pretty easy to act on. But this was actually one real example that played out. So just to come back and summarize, so here are the two books, and here are the two questions that we used and leveraged to make the system better and work for our users. How does this data make me feel? If you can't look at your dashboard from arm's length or a little bit of distance away and see good or bad things in it, you're probably missing an opportunity. You've got opportunity to evaluate whether this is a good number or a bad number, or this should be going up or this should be going down. You've got lots of opportunity to apply that thinking. And then also, what default action is being nudged? What, if there is a problem, what do we recommend our stakeholders do about it? And can the system give them a predicted best answer, and then let humans make their judgment calls what they really should do given that information? So these are the two takeaways and the books that we really learned from and relied on to accomplish this. And then I've got one last small detail. We really believe that these together provide half of the human in the loop conversation. Machines provide information and data and insights and predictions and prescriptions to the humans, and then the humans provide the oversight and the judgment and the adjustments back to the machines. Well, the best way that we have found and learned through this process for a machine to provide information to a human is to create that fast, intuitive usability that provides that interpretation of the data and also offers the nudge as to what would be a prescribed action that you should do with this information. In X-rays, the fast usability could be highlighting some aberrant tissue or a broken bone, and then the nudge would be recommending treatment options or something to do based on that. But the physician would still be able to make their own decisions what they do given that information. And so we really believe that creating enhanced teams, creating fast and nudge psychology-based information coming out from the AI, the ML, the machines, is really the best way to create half of this loop that sets up humans to best use their judgment to quickly make better decisions. And with that, any questions that anybody has? I love talking about this stuff, and like I say, we learned a whole bunch of things building this. That it was many months of hard work, but it was super rewarding to learn and understand these things.
Hey, John.
I'm pretty much ready to give you my money at this point. So where can I buy this?
Excellent. I love working on systems doing this kind of stuff. And I hope this presentation means that tomorrow, everybody can tomorrow also ask these questions of your own systems. I want this to be actionable for you as well. This is also stuff that I love working on, so I'd be super happy to work and help and talk about it. But these are the key questions that we learned. I see Jay's got his hand raised.
I'm unmuting Jay.
Hey,
Hey,
I can show my video too. Cool. I'm on my phone, so it may look weird. I have no idea.
that's all good.
So I really like your system, and I'm curious to know, because I do something similar, but I do it kind of manual. I'm all about like low effort, big impact, right? But it's really hard to get like large enterprises on. So like years ago, I worked at Schwab, and they have like 800 teams. And I inherited a project. Well, it kind of came to my team as the end of the project. It was a year overdue, but with the data, like in the Monte Carlo that you talk about, they could have managed it much, much better. And I'm wondering, do you guys, in your algorithm or whatever you're doing, are you considering like all the teams or the system of systems and looking at bottlenecks and things of that nature, and like using the theory of constraints kind of to kind of say, hey, you know, where can we improve so we can improve the delivery of, you know, value to customers?
Oh, well, so two points. One, the system that I was showing you was the company that we had created in 2016 and was acquired in 2020. That system is now off with them. In general, though, taking these same kinds of psychology and the same kinds of math and reapplying it to systems with both a systems thinking and a theory of constraints approach is absolutely the way that I recommend doing it. The ability to look at optimizing the whole, I think, is an even higher level of what are we doing in terms of the economic results for our organization for all of our projects. If we get bogged down in one or two projects that look like they're not going to finish for a really long time, and those resources would be better spent elsewhere, the PMO, the portfolio view, then being able to create a system that evaluates the impacts and gives you an indication, a fast thinking indication with a nudge that says this project should be canceled, should be killed, because it's starving resources for these other 4 really valuable projects that would be much better in terms of killing a project. Many organizations are allergic to killing projects. They won't do it because they don't have enough data to tell them for sure that a project should be killed. And politically or socially or culturally, it's difficult to kill projects. Providing an analytic answer that says this project or these 3 projects should be killed, and here's the data why, gives people a much stronger foundation to stand on to be able to say, I think this data is right, and I think these should be killed, and here's why. And then that changes the conversation.
Yeah, I've had similar issues because I'll go in and be like, here's the data, and then the human side of things kind of take over, and the political and cultural things take over, right? And you can't make any progress, and so you know, so you'll have a gazillion things in progress, and nothing ever changes, and people are overburdened and whatnot. So, but I mean, I've had success with showing like line charts with CFDs, making that, simplifying that, and showing kind of like the Monte Carlo of, hey, here's what the team can do. And oh, by the way, the backlog just blew past their 95th percentile of delivery. What do you want to do? Right. And so, but what I like about your system, it seems to show kind of the whole, the system of systems, which is a lot more difficult to show at that enterprise level.
It is, yeah. And with Aptage, the startup that we had, we never quite got as far as creating the whole system of systems, the portfolio of companies, but that was definitely something that we thought would be a great direction to go. And I still love that kind of stuff. I'd love to rebuild those things. I'd love to create that.
Cool. Yeah. Well, we should get lunch.
Absolutely. Let's do that.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Jay. Any other questions? Comments, reactions?
Just a comment or a reaction on that discussion. I think that the power there, because this is a product, SIG and AI, and there's a number of engineers and some of us are engineering leaders, is getting product and engineering together and agreeing. I think, Jay, you had talked about that, like, hey, we're 95, we're at the 95th percentile, or we're 95, whatever that budget is. It's like, it's even less about whether it's good or not good. It's kind of like, what do we do with this information is really interesting. And if you had a framework, and I know some of us are familiar with constraints and things like weighted shortest job first, and you know, as you go through that process and you have a periodic review, a portfolio review, it's really not about, is this team bad, is this team good, blah blah blah. It's kind of like, well, this is what we've learned so far, and now do we change our priorities? And we know that if we'd be frenetic if we changed everything so frequently, but that doesn't mean don't change everything. And I think having a tool, which sort of touches on another topic, and I've learned this many times and from one of my mentors, and John and I worked together many years ago in a company that was also acquired, was having a tool that tells you these things actually gets around a lot of the political stuff. And it's like, it's the power of like actionable insights as opposed to pages of gauges. And it's like now the system is telling you what it is, and it tends to depoliticize it. I didn't believe it at first when this mentor of mine told me, and I was like, that's bullshit. It's like we're all objective thinking humans, and it's like, no, I was wrong. So those are just like a couple of like initial reactions. Having a system for how you make those decisions that sets sort of the default rules of how you do it, and then having a tool give you insight and maybe even tells you the default answer on how you proceed. And then it's like, oh, well, this is just what we said we were going to do.
Yeah. I don't know what I can't point at the psychology or reference for it, but there's a thing that I've grown to call the third thing. You were saying that if two people are talking without a tool or data, the two people can be having a conversation and it's, well, I think this and I think that, and they don't really make much progress. They both think different things and they're talking together. If there's a third thing, the whiteboard diagram of the system or the data chart that shows this is going right with the backup, if there's a third thing that becomes the triangle where these two people are now pointing at that thing and saying, well, this means something, there's some, and I don't know what the names are, I can't reference it, but there's some psychology behind the third thing, depoliticizing it, it's no longer a binary conversation between two people disagreeing. It's now a different kind of conversation. Vishal, I see your hand up.
Hey, all right, so no, this was great, appreciate it. All of this resonates really well, the dashboards and, the visual aspect. The question I had was, these dashboards are only as good as the data behind it. So, that's the hard part with most organizations, just getting to the data. And especially now we're talking about, if we talk about systems of systems and trying to gather the accurate data from all of those, so that somehow you can run your analysis and come up with, hey, here's what seems to be wrong. What if the data itself is wrong?
The data itself, that's a great question. Hang on one second.
It's not updated, basically. It may not be wrong, it's just that it's not updated.
Well, actually, there's an important thing. If people are asked to update data and the data is not used in any virtuous feedback loop at all, people have no real internal motivation to update that data. And so without using the data, there's no motivation to keep it up to date because it's just a drain on people's time and effort. And so in some sense, you've got to create a system that creates the right feedback loops so that updating data helps make better decisions and helps people's lives, and they see the value of updating the data. And project plans is a key example where people don't always update project plans because there's almost no value in doing it to anybody. So you're right about the data consistency and updates at all. I would say that there's one other slice that you can apply. What we're looking at on the screen is a probability distribution. This is an empirical distribution. It's not like a normal or a Gaussian or anything. It's just the results of the Monte Carlo. If you're operating in a probabilistic variable sense, where variables have some uncertainty, if we're doing estimates with ranges, if we're saying that the sales numbers will be 1 to 3% better, probably 1.5. If we do things like that, then it's not that the garbage data becomes garbage results, it's that uncertainty becomes uncertain inputs become uncertain outputs. And if you're not happy with how uncertain the outputs are, you can work on reducing uncertainty in the inputs. And so uncertainty, the mathematics of uncertainty, part of it is like how we got to these distributions. They can be a really useful way of, if you're updating the data at all, they're a really useful way of being able to say, well, this data is not perfect, but it's good enough for us to make directionally better decisions from. And we can spend effort to reduce uncertainty to make better decisions if we want to. So I would say you're right that bad data can be bad, but uncertain data can still be useful.
We are, quick time check, we are at exactly 4 o'clock. Does anyone have any quick last questions? Otherwise, we will try to wrap up. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, John. Absolutely appreciate you taking the time. And this was a great topic actually. And I know your love of books and how you kind of have the insights and the nuggets from that. So I appreciate that. I think for next time, I quickly do want to ask the folks that are on the call. It's going to be quick. It's going to be like 5-minute kind of burst, short things. So if you have anything you would like to talk about, could be it could be a comment, observation, it could be a question, a challenge that you're running into. Please do send it out ahead of time so we can do a little bit of preparation for it. So thank you so much.